Hi everyone, my name's Chelsea, aka Sunspren. Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to do something I have not done before. I want to talk about the Wheel of Time book series. And I'm really excited about this. Again, this is like my first go around chatting about Wheel of Time. Um, so I'm going to start with the non-spoilery stuff. And I'll try to we'll slowly get around to the spoilery stuff later, and I'll try to make an announcement before I do that. So let me give you some background. I started really reading The Wheel of Time this year, in around March, and it's now November, and I'm about 6 books in. That's not a whole lot of progress, but I've had a lot of stuff going on in my personal life. My dad is on hospice as of this month, so needless to say, I've just had a lot going on and haven't had a lot of time to read. Thus, it's taking me a while. Uh, But I had a chance to read Wheel of Time a long time ago. When I was in high school, one of my best friends and I were huge Lord of the Rings fans. We still are. But at the time, the movies had just come out and we were just still geeking out over them. We absolutely loved Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings and the books and the Silmarillion and everything else. So she dove right into Wheel of Time and she said, "You got to read these." But at the time, in my naive sensibilities, I picked up um, on something and misinterpreted it. I picked up Wheel of Time, I flipped through it, or sorry, Eye of the World, book one, flipped through it, and I found a bunch of stuff that reminded me of Tolkien, and I thought, I don't want to read a knockoff. I don't want to read discount Lord of the Rings. It's just copy and paste. I don't want bunch of farm people from the farm who go to do the big quest, who are led by a lady wizard, who have all this other, I just kept, as I flipped through it, I noticed Trollocs instead of orcs, and I just thought, this is just the same. Why would I want to read the same thing? And she tried to explain to me that it's not the same. Uh, but I wasn't listening. I was in my own zone. And I had already realized as a fantasy fan, or a burgeoning fantasy fan, that, everybody borrows from Tolkien. Like, Dragonlance certainly did. Other stories did, but for some reason, I just thought in my mind that Wheel of Time was this big Tolkien ripoff, and I wasn't going to go there. Well, obviously, I learned different, and over the years, I've waited for the opportunity when I would have some time to pick up Wheel of Time and really want to devote myself to it. I knew it was a long series. I knew that, you know, for a long time it was incomplete, and then it was finally completed by Brandon Sanderson and all that. That all figured into why it took me so long as well. Anyway, having said that, this is a very interesting series, and in that I didn't realize how big the gap in my fantasy knowledge about the genre really, really was. I didn't know how big that hole was, the void. Uh, it was substantial. One of the things I have learned about this series, this is still non-spoiler territory. I should have read this a long time ago. And there's a reason people say that. It's not condescending, and they don't mean it in terms of like some weird chronology or something. Here's how I would characterize why you should read Wheel of Time if you're a fantasy fan. Right now, again, I'm not even done with the series, but it has filled in this gap for me in the timeline of authorship, in the timeline of fantasy as a genre, right? Tolkien is not necessarily the father of fantasy. He's the father of fantasy as we know it. But I mean, there's been mythology and fairy tales and all that for a long time. But let's just call Tolkien the beginning for our intents and purposes here. So there's Tolkien, and then there's like George R. R. Martin and everybody else. Well, in the middle, there's Robert Jordan. And I realize that's not quite accurate in terms of actual like dates, but that is very much in terms of the structure of stories, that is very much the way it is. If you have not read Wheel of Time and you just read Lord of the Rings like I did, and then started reading Song of Ice and Fire, Dresden Files, Harry Potter, uh, yada yada yada, there's a substantial gap. Uh, and Jordan knocks into this little place on the bookshelf, and you suddenly start to understand the development of the genre. That is really cool. I'd always heard, people like Sanderson saying, A Wheel of Time was huge for me. It was very, fundamental. And Martin talks about, yeah, Wheel of Time's big, and everybody references it. But now I see, oh, so many tropes and so many of these people who wrote sprawling stories and the world building for these cultures and how the cultures clash, and the Game of Thrones, the Game of Houses, in Wheel of Time. Things like how they took direct inspiration, not just like a little inspiration or like this kind of character. Like people still take Tolkien's elves essentially and the dwarves essentially pretty much as they are, and just paste them somewhere else, um, with very similar results, right? This is not quite the same thing. This is its own development of a different sort of vibe, a totally different political focus to fantasy that has carried forward. And it is really, really cool to see the inspiration behind some of those newer works in Wheel of Time. That is one of the things I got out of it, first and foremost. You'll love that if you're into like development of literature. I'm a big lit fan, so I'm like, oh, this is so cool. I'm geeking out. Um, I love that. Another thing I've gotten from a positive thing I have to say about Wheel of Time is that it really is just that big. It's that sprawling. It is massive. Uh, Sometimes too massive, I think, even for its author. Not to diss Robert Jordan, he did a fantastic job. But I think the editing this had to have been an absolute nightmare to get through because it's slow. It is a lumbering iceberg of a story. And as much as I love epic fantasy, I think maybe this is pushing it for me. And I am sad to say that. I didn't think I had I don't want to say a limit. God, do I really want to limit myself like that? But in terms of like what I get out of it versus what I'm putting into it, there is a relationship there. I'm putting a lot in, and sometimes I'm getting something out, and sometimes I'm not. And that's okay for this type of story. I'm learning about the world, and if you're a world person, then you have to read The Wheel of Time. You need to. It's important. But I don't think, controversial opinion, that it is as well written as A Song of Ice and Fire. And that is probably not going to be a popular opinion, given that A Song of Ice and Fire is headed where it's headed, and given that we don't have the next book. But in terms of actual like dialogue, I found A Song of Ice and Fire, and even Cosmere. Oh, can I say that? Yeah, I think I can say that. Definitely Song of Ice and Fire is better at characterizing people as individuals. You know when you're reading them that these are their thoughts because it feels like their thoughts and it's written from their perspective. That is a lesson I think authors took away from Wheel of Time. That perspective is better. You will feel the characters more with these hundreds of characters if you actually give them their point of view, not just their chapter, but their point of view and their biases and their all of that. I think that's something they took away because as well written as the story is overall, um, for Wheel of Time, the individuals don't always sound like individuals. Uh, it just you can kind of read Egwene, Elaine, Nynaeve, interchangeably sometimes. Not exactly. Nynaeve's pretty. Early on, they are very much their own people, but as there starts to be more and more characters and more things, you're like, okay, what's the difference between this white cloak and that white cloak? Um, I get that Nynaeve's speech is a little different, but Elaine and Egwene sound real similar sometimes, and so do all these other people, and the thoughts that they have are the same sometimes, and you're like, wait a minute, they should be thinking different things because they're different people. Okay, that's a slight criticism. It's not as big a problem as I'm making it. Like you can tell who the characters are, but if I just took a line of dialogue from A Song of Ice and Fire, you could tell who's speaking just based on the way they think and the way they talk, their cadence, where they're from, what they if they're angry, if they're depressed, if they're resentful. You just know. You can almost know immediately who's talking uh, at any point. Sometimes that's the case with Jordan, but not always. Anyway, shelving that for a minute. Another thing I took away from Wheel of Time so far is that um political fantasy is hard. It's tricky to engage an audience with political fantasy. And sometimes it works in this story, sometimes it doesn't. And that's just me. And I'm a pretty I enjoy a little bit of politics. If you hate politics, you're going to get to the middle of this story and be pretty frustrated. Um, because this is book 6 and it's starting to get political, pretty political. Um, and the last thing I'll say before I get into spoiler territory is that there's a lot of gender issues in the Wheel of Time. And I don't mean like woke gender issues. I mean that Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time is an inherently binary, gendered story. Like that is there's a male half of the source, there's a female half of the source. You probably don't even know what the source is. That's fine. You may not know if you're in the non-spoiler territory, but whatever. It's very black and white. And that is really cool in some aspects and really limiting and a little bit revealing about perhaps Robert Jordan's limited perspective into the female psyche. Um, but other times it's a real different flavor. It's a really unique flavor for the story. To have that binary in place and starkly in place. Although I think sometimes it's a weakness as well. It's both, it's strength and a weakness, which how funny actually plays right into the story quite well. Okay, so I think that's not my only takeaways. That's the non-spoilery takeaways where I can say it without getting into any spoilers whatsoever. So from here on out, spoilers for books 1 through 6. Although I'm not even through 6. I am right there, right? I'm almost done, but not quite. Maybe a little over halfway. I'll get there eventually, I swear. So, things I want to talk about with the Wheel of Time so far. Specifically, I'm going to get more into everything from here on out. The Aes Sedai are a fascinating part of this book. Probably my favorite piece of world building by Robert Jordan is a reveal. Well, not a reveal. The way the Aes Sedai run things and how they function within the world. Because so often we see men running the world. And there's nothing wrong with that. I have no problem with that. whatsoever. I'm not saying this is better. I'm saying this is different, especially for me, to have an author actually do a female dominated, female run world where magic is controlled mostly by them and excluded from men on purpose. I think that's one of the cleverer things that Robert Jordan did with this story. It's different. You want to know more. It's layered, different ajas, different perspectives, different biases, really deep biases on behalf of many of these women, pro and against, and every shade thereof regarding men. And I think that is quite the best and most complex of the gender issues that, come up in Wheel of Time. That's the one where Robert Jordan really, I say shines, because it's not subtlety. There's no subtlety in the gender uh relations in the Wheel of Time. But this is a peeling of the onion. There are very clear layers, very clear strata to this structure of the Aes Sedai and their what has become essentially their world, and what happens when the male side of things returns, threatens to return, who believes it, who doesn't, the women that understand perhaps what's going on and those who are determined to stop it, and all of the intentions and the prejudices that are wrapped up in that. That's really good stuff. Where Robert Jordan is less astute and certainly about as sharp. Yes. Yay! Where Robert Jordan is not as I don't know, where the finesse seems to fall apart. Not to say that there was a lot of finesse necessarily there to start with. But sometimes his women are a little shallow. Sometimes his men are a little bit shallow. And perhaps that is to be expected and maybe more realistic, because in fact, some people are a little shallow. However, the repetition of certain things is not fun to read. Sometimes you just go, women do not fixate on their clothes that much. They fixate on certain things whenever they want to look good for a reason, but there's not like a constant obsession with clothes, or hair, or your boyfriend. I don't know, it's just very juvenile. And the characters are juveniles when the story starts out. So you understand that. You go, yeah, that's totally okay, yeah, okay, sure. Totally understandable in Eye of the World. But as you get further into the story and they stay the same, you're going, or in certain regards. In some regards, they grow as people. Egwene, Nynaeve, Elaine, they develop. But in others, it's like they're determined to make sure that that Nynaeve dreams of wearing a pretty dress in front of Lan. Well, no. Well, I'm sure there's probably a deeper thought there than just, I would like to look sexy for my man. And constantly bringing that up and constantly being embarrassed by it in Tel'aran'rhiod just drives me crazy. Every time we enter the dream world, we have to have a conversation about what everyone looks like and what they're wearing and what they're not wearing, and how the clothes change to fit their mood, and their mood's always thinking about their man. It's just ridiculous. It's silly. Get on with it. Get on with the story. And the men are always, wool-headed, and they never understand women. And it's just, they don't realize half the time when someone's, coming on to them to try to marry them or set them up with somebody. They're always just so awkward around the opposite sex, and there's no right now it doesn't make any sense. Uh, and some of the romances are poorly handled. Um, in the category of ones that are well handled, there's Nynaeve Lan. I think that's probably my favorite so far. Rand and Aviendha. Their theirs isn't bad. Um, but I so far, and Swan and what's his name? Gareth, I think. That's coming along nicely. I hope that ends up as a romance. I think that's where that's going. Pretty sure. think I think that's clear by now. Um, it, but Egwene and Gawain, that's killing me. That is terrible. It was literally foreshadowed for like 4 books that Egwene was gonna either end up with Galad or hit on Galad and find out he's a jerk, and then end up with Gawain instead of Galad. Well, none of that happened. They just were together. 1 minute that 3 books ago she last saw him at the tower when he was training, and then thought about his brother for 3 books while Elaine said, no, he's a jerk, no, he's a jerk, no, he's a jerk. And then all of a sudden in book 6, she enters a dream world, gets sucked into Gawain's dream about her, and now they're in love. It just totally. I mean, you have thousands of, excuse me, pages. You couldn't dedicate like 2 scenes to these people meeting up somewhere. Ugh, very poorly handled. And there are things that are just dropped. Oh, I forgot Perrin and Fail. That was okay. Um, it's better later on. Um, but that doesn't really start well. We're developing a mature way. Uh, just browbeating the guy until he's interested in you. I don't know. Romance was not his forte, is what I'm saying. Oh, and I'm not that big of a sucker for romance, but it's indicative sometimes of maybe the only thing that holds Jordan back as an author is some of his emotional resonance just is lacking. The romance is one example of that. It's not the entirety of it. But there's just not a lot of emotional payoff except for like 2 or 3 times in each book. I'd say like there are 2 or 3 times in every single book where you go, whoa, oh, or wow, and or aw, and that's it. Um, it's not to say I don't care, because believe me, after spending this much time with characters, I absolutely do care. I have cried at least, I think, maybe twice in the series so far over characters. So it's not that I don't care, it's just that he doesn't always emphasize um, character emotions in realistic ways that make me want to just attach to them. But I'm sure other people would disagree. And it's early days. It's only book 6. So I guess I could be wrong. All right, let me see, what else do I want to talk about? Moiraine. R.I.P. Moiraine. She was fantastic. Oh, so disappointed when she died. Particularly as the like Rand's reaction just pisses me off. Just pisses me off. Spent all these books. Moiraine's just trying to get me to do this. Moiraine's a manipulative B word. Moiraine wants me to do this. And then what does he do? As soon as she's dead, for the entirety of this book, he's been like, well, Moiraine said this. She was right. Well, Moiraine prepared me for this. She was right. Well, Moiraine did this. She was right. Well, no shit. That's been a long time coming. Rand. Anyway, Moiraine was just a fantastic character. Mysterious, um, dark sometimes, light others. Um, a character with a hard edge, a Gandalf for this story, but not a Gandalf that you necessarily want to hang around. like more like the anti-Gandalf, where you're like, I don't really want to be around you. You're kind of irritating and you think you know everything. Of course, that's because she does. And that illustrates something else that Robert Jordan does really well, which is turns some tropes into more realistic versions of the concept. For example, if you were a wizard or a witch in a world like this, where those powers are, rare, relatively rare speaking, and you're pretty good at what you do and you've been around a while, you're gonna think you're the bee's knees and that you know a fuck ton about everything and everybody else is an idiot. And you're probably gonna be right half the time at least. Well, most people are idiots. So when Moiraine comes across that way, makes sense. It's more realistic, perhaps, than benevolent old, all-seeing, all-knowing wizards who I love, but who perhaps, with real people, I don't know. You're not going to get a Gandalf out of every person you hand wizarding power to, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So for Moiraine was just such a fascinating character because she's kind of, yeah, I can see that. I can see why after years of plotting, scheming, spying, um, traveling, learning, and people still don't listen to you, you'd be pretty frustrated and pissed off with those people. Especially if you're trying to save their ass over and over again. Could she have been more, you know, kinder, more palatable, understanding? Maybe, yeah, she could have, but I understand perhaps why she was not. And there's lots of examples of that in The Wheel of Time, where something maybe a trope you thought you understood pretty well is flipped. Uh, one of my favorite things about this series is that Perrin went home. He went back to the Two Rivers. He fought for that place. He rallied that town and they fought against the onslaught. And that it was not Rand who did it, it was Perrin. I love that. And I love that he actually did go home and defend it. One of the things that I find missing from some stories is fantasy's got lots of these tropes where the main characters start out like they're from a country village or they're from a small town or whatever, and they go off and have their big adventure, and when they come back the place is either destroyed or they go back and they're like, I remember a long time ago I was just a little person when I was here, and now I'm the big hero, and they walk away because you can't go home or whatever. It's always like uh they have a bigger destiny or whatever. I, what a bunch of crap. Like, surely one out of the like five people who went off to have an adventure would come back and be like, we gotta fix this place. And we gotta help. We need to do something. Yes, I still care about all the little people who are here because I was raised by them. This is my town. This is where I'm from. Like, I may be the big hero who didn't belong here, but screw that. I was raised here for 18 years. Anyway, I really appreciated that Perrin went home and that the people of the Two Rivers are closet badasses. They're crazy and they're country people, but they are closet badasses, and I like that. I always appreciate a story where it's not just the big people that make a difference, the big powerful people. Um, and that's probably because of Tolkien that I feel that way. Uh, and really most fantasy. I'm so glad he went home and defended the Two Rivers. That fills my heart with joy. And nobody else probably thinks that's important, but I think it's probably more important than a lot of what, the others have done, in my opinion. At least as far as I'm concerned. All right, let's see. What else can we talk about? The Aiel are pretty awesome. Uh, I love that there's a direct correlation between the Aiel in the Wheel of Time and the Wildlings in A Song of Ice and Fire. That's cool. Tribal societies on the fringe of a um extreme weather scenario and all this stuff. It's just cool. the heat that creeps on in throughout the lands, and the cold that's coming, the winter that is coming in A Song of Ice and Fire. The Game of Houses and Carrion, and the Game of Thrones in A Song of Ice and Fire. Uh, some subtle influences, some just direct um, borrowings, saying, "No, I love that idea. I'm going to do that and twist it." Nods and things like, "Yeah, okay, yeah." I I love that. I love seeing the inspiration they must have taken. And I've read some things that I thought, "Oh, Sanderson probably borrowed that." Okay, all right, interesting. What else do I want to talk about here? I don't know that I want to project where this is going. Another thing going for the Wheel of Time is that by book 6, you have no idea what the hell is going to happen next. You assume the last battle is coming. I assume that's coming. I have no idea when, no idea what that means, and no idea what's going to happen, after that. I went into this series assuming that would be the end of the series, but I'm beginning to think that perhaps that's not how this is going to go. I haven't been reading spoilers or anything, but I've kind of pieced together based on things people have said that that's not what's going to happen. I don't have a clue. Like, the story doesn't end there. I don't know. Okay, it's a wheel, right? So I have no idea where this is going. What else? Let's see. Okay, talk about the Aiel. I hope that Elaine's mother gets the throne back in Caemlyn. That would be good. I like her. She's pretty solid as a person. Although she's getting in bed with the White Cloaks now. I mean, it's not her fault. She's being forced, held against her will and forced. That's not exactly, like it's just a decision she made. But she's going to be stuck with that, I'm afraid, and that's going to suck. Um, that's going to suck. But I hope, she lives because she's a great character. Elaine has grown on me. Egwene I already liked from the beginning, but her journey with the Wise Ones, I think, was pretty good, and she just ended her, I think, time. Well, no, not ended. Part of her arc has the latest arc where she's with the Wise Ones. She's learning to dreamwalk, and they're teaching her things, but she's hiding things from them, like the fact that she's not really Aes Sedai, she's just accepted. Uh, well, she just blew it and told them so, and she has told to them. So that's where I'm at, exactly where I'm at. So I don't know what she's going to do to try to make up for that before she leaves for Saladar, where uh the little tower, the is at, the other home base for the Aes Sedai, who aren't ruled by Elaida. Anyway, she's been summoned there, but she's not going there yet. Apparently, she has to try to fulfill this obligation uh, to the Aiel Wise Ones before she goes back. Don't know how long that's gonna take. All right, what else is happening? Uh, Thom Merrilin has. I love that character. I love Tom. He's fantastic. I don't know where that character is going, and there hasn't been a lot of him in the past book. His relationship with Elaine has been established and all that, but I don't know. I have no clue where that's headed, because it seems like, he could have been a love interest for the queen, but Morghese, sorry, I just remembered her name. But Morghese is interested in someone else now. Uh, and that was a long time ago anyway. And Tom's pretty old. So I don't know where that's going. Lan rode off into the night, like after Moiraine was killed. And is Moiraine like permadead? I I don't know. I've read enough stories to know that, this is fantasy. Nobody has to be dead. But I assume by Lan's reaction that she is, and that he headed out. Moraine had already discussed with him what was going to happen when she died. And that was foreshadowed for a long time. If you didn't see Moraine dying coming, well, you're blind, because that was heavily, 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 heavily foreshadowed. Um, Depressingly so. But when Lan just rode off into the night, he hasn't come back yet. So waiting to find out what Lan's gonna do, where he's going. Uh, what else is going on? Uh, I was about to say Vin. Wrong story, Chelsea. Min? Am I even getting these names right? I think Min and Avienda and Elaine are the three women who like orbit Rand, right? Rand is like the stud muffin, and they're all like, supposed to have been, they've all fallen in love with him. Nobody can have him. That's so, I hope that's going somewhere, because right now it's just getting on my nerves. I, I have nothing against these characters and nothing against, someone wanting their main character to have a threesome with some hot babes, but that's I'm just waiting for the payoff. Like, okay, fine. I hope that's going somewhere. Otherwise, it's kind of silly. You could have just told the story without having a foreshadowing of three lovers for him. Tell the story. Sometimes I'm like, just tell the story. Quit laying these weird visions out there, which also came to a screeching halt. We haven't seen Min or any of her visions in a while. Okay, what else is going on? Oh, the Ogier. The Ogier are headed to get Loyal from Two Rivers. Rand just like teleported them there in this book via traveling, just took them. And that's like his biggest fear, is having those damn parents of his and the woman that he's supposed to be, his mother's supposed to do a matchmaking thing and set him up with this woman. Sure enough, here they all are. So sure, that'll be fun. I hope they show up in this book so I can find out what's going to happen then. I guess I need to talk about the seals on the Dark One's prison. I do not understand, but I can't think that it's a good thing that every time we see a seal, it's broken already. Like, it's the craziest thing. Sometimes Robert Jordan will do this, and you're like, what the hell is happening? You're told about Quendalar, you're told it's this like unbreakable substance and it never breaks, and every single piece of it that we've seen has pretty much been broken. Like nearly. Like of the at least the main stuff, like the seals on the Dark One's prison were made of this substance, and they're all flaking, falling apart, breaking. No matter what our heroes do. So I mean, I take it that this is, it's just inevitable. There's no, it, it was there was never going to be a fix to this problem, right? That's what I'm getting from all of this is, you know, this cycle perpetuates and there's no way out. I guess. I don't think there's a whole lot to say about the Forsaken. I have enjoyed them as villains. Sometimes I think that they're not working together makes sense, that their propensity to hate one another and be jealous of one another and sort of like clamor for the numero uno position makes sense, and then sometimes it feels a little silly. Um, like kind of like he's avoiding the fact that if they work together they could do a lot more. But then again, that's one of the checks on evil that has always, existed in stories. So how can I really pick this apart? Um, but I like them on the whole. They're suitably terrifying when on the loose, and some of them I like more than others. Lanfear I liked in the beginning, and then Lanfear started to be just a one note whiner about, the scorned lover thing. Yeah, not much to say about them right now. Don't trust any of them, obviously. I think I'm at the nearly at the end of all I had to say. Let's see. I talked about Matt. Matt is a delight. Perrin's my favorite character. If you had to ask me who my favorite was, straight up, I'd say Perrin. But Matt, I I'm always intrigued to see what damn trouble Matt's gonna get into every single time we see him. He's just that character for this story where you turn the page and you're like, Matt Cawthorn was doing, and you're like, oh hell, here we go. Here we go. What's gonna happen now? Uh he's just such a like I'm gonna say wild card, but the collection of powers and things that trail Matt now are just hilarious. Some things that had something to do with the story, some things had absolutely nothing to do with the story. Like he gets pulled into another dimension. I just started talking to my boyfriend about this the other day. Court was like, yeah, that's all, kind of over here. I'm like, yeah, is that ever explained? Like, where the was that? Who the hell were those beings? And it just comes out with all of this, some of this power has to do with the world he's on, some of it has to do with this other random place that he went. Um, he has memories that he shouldn't have, and tongue speaks old tongues and knows things he shouldn't from long ago, and uh, all kinds of interesting things. And Rand, of course, has Lews Therin in his brain, and I I'm curious to see where that's going. Is that personality eventually going to take over and really lead? Or is that always just going to be a voice in the back of his head that he's trying to communicate with and trying to or trying to shut it up? Because he spent a long time trying to shut it up. Now he seems to be trying to communicate with him, if it's really him. And of all the developments, for Rand to go in there and get bonded as a warder by Alana, I was like, oh my God, you gotta be kidding me. You gotta be kidding me. Rand, God damn it, Rand. That was stupid. Like, I'm just gonna go in here with 3 Aes Sedai. I could take them. Okay, when's the last time these women didn't outmaneuver you? I'd like to know. I mean, all of those years not trusting the one Aes Sedai who was actually on his side, and then Moiraine. And then the first thing he does is go get bonded as a warder in a random inn on a random day. I can just see Moiraine in the afterlife going, you fucking dumbass. Headcanon. Oh, jeez. That was one of my oh wow for this book. Oh wow. Great job, Rand. mm. Where was I going with that? I don't know where I was going with that. There's a few things that popped up in this that I thought, what? That was one of them. We got the Game of Houses that's being played right now between the Carrion nobles and Terran nobles and all these different, people vying for power, and none of them are suitably interesting. Unfortunately, no matter how many times you tell me what colors they wear or what their beards look like or whatever, or the demeanor, these people wear black colors, these people wear stripes of different colors. It's not enough, Robert Jordan. It's not enough. You got to give me something to sink my teeth into, to really give me a reason to care about them. Tragedy, something. But and the White Cloaks are just, they were terrifying at first. Now they're pretty boring. Kind of like the Murderall and the Gray Men. They're really terrifying the first few books, and then after that, you're going, okay, well, Rand can take them like anytime. And like when they attack someone else, you're worried about them. When they attack Rand, you're like, Rand's got this. Plot armor, he's fine. He'll be fine. Um, I'm trying to think if I have any observations about the world in general, or um, oh, Nynaeve managed to heal Logain. What the hell? Wow. That was that was cool. I was like, oh, okay. Damn, Nynaeve is good when she's pissed off. Fortunately, she's almost always pissed off. I'm waiting for the Seanchan to show back up. They haven't made a reappearance in a while. Mm, what else is going on? I don't know, but thus far, I think it has been a hell of a story. Um, Rand's journey from farm boy to the Dragon Reborn and all that that entails, all the different peoples he has met and interacted with, the ways in which he has tried to lead, um, sometimes being forced into it, sometimes trying to run from it, sometimes trying to embrace it, sometimes trying to fit in, sometimes trying to stick out. Um, it's interesting. I think that's a very broad perspective on leadership that I hadn't. It's realistic in some ways, and in others, it's painfully unrealistic. Um, there's a healthy amount of both, right? The realism is there in that that's how someone like that would react. Like certain cultures they would maybe feel comfortable with, others they would probably not. I have to learn the ways, like he had to learn the ways of the Aiel and all that. But other things are a little bit less believable. Like they would just go, "Oh, you're the one. We follow you now, even though you don't know any of our ways hardly. But your mom was Aiel, and you came from this background. So guess what? At least they had the whole Ruidian story to make that make more sense. Um, but really, they've all had to do that. All of the characters who came from the Two Rivers have had to come across and interact with lots of different cultures, and some of them are a little extra for them. You know what I mean? They see the Quorum Wars and all that, and they're like, oh, okay, the sea folk are a little. It's a lot of rings and noses and earrings and all that. I don't know about that. The bare one breast, that's a little weird. Oh, these people do that. Oh, the Aiel, they just undress in front of people, get naked, they don't care. Tribal ways and all that. I appreciate that Rand has had to try to navigate all that, although I feel like they've copped out some in that he doesn't really have to navigate any of it. He had Moraine for all of the hard stuff. Now he's just dealing with like nobility and people like backstabbing at one another, and because he has Lews Therin in his mind, I think that helps too. Uh, but he has gotten a little wiser. I'll give him his props. Rand has gotten a little smarter as time has gone on, a little more world wise. I appreciate that. Um, but it was fun for them to experience culture shock over the course of the series. I would think that would be the case. And assumptions that they always had that are kind of broken down slowly but surely. It's more complicated than just all Aes Sedai are manipulative assholes. They are, but it's more complicated than that. Um, what else? But I don't know. Um, Rand's letting he's got all these men who are going to channel at this school now, and that's something that's definitely world altering. If nothing else, that's probably the thing he's done what's going to be major. a major shift. Elida is gonna flip the hell out. Um, not that I care, I hate her, but it would be interesting to see if the men who channel in that school under Rand go insane. If he has to deal with them or not, or if somehow they're immune to that because of him, I truly do not know. Um, no. I wonder if Lan will ever, I don't know, be okay after Moraine. I was hoping Nynaeve would bond him, but I guess that might be a ways off, seeing as how Nynaeve is not full Aes Sedai, neither are the others. Neither is Elaine, neither is Egwene. That's another realistic little tidbit that I found helpful. You know, people, if you were going to study magic, you would not be handed like the title within a year. You'd be studying for a long, long time. You would have to prove yourself over and over and over and over to be able to claim that title, that power. And I thought, yes, I think that's as frustrating as it is for the characters, you and for the reader sometimes, because it feels like it's just being retread, right? We're only accepted. Well, yeah, you wouldn't, that's realistic. You wouldn't be anything else for a long time. And every time you piss them off, you'd probably be put down a rung, made to do more dishes. That makes sense. Especially with the place that has to have a rigid hierarchy like that. Oh, what else? What else? I don't think we'll visit Perrin and Fail very much more in Two Rivers. I don't know what's happening there, but it seems like that's calmed down by this point in the story. Um, I know I haven't talked about everybody, but I think that's all I've got for now. So right now it's just a sprawling, well-told, huge world story. It's got some pitfalls. It's got some boring politics and some retreading of repetitive stuff. Repetition is probably one of the things that kills some of the believability here. Um, I don't mind having things repeated a couple of times for me. I'm not so observant that I could just read it once and remember. But sometimes the repetition is a little bit much. You're like, okay, we get it. We get what the White Cloaks want. We don't need to be retold every time they show up. We don't need it to be re-implied to us every time. Um, we know what the Reds want and don't want. We know. We don't need it over and over and over and over. Uh, we just don't, and I don't even care about the Terrans and Carrion and all that want. Ah, uh, so the repetition thing can get a little old. But anyway, aside from the repetition, some of the the shallow games that they play with their men and women who behave like teenagers when they really, after seeing what they have seen, going through what they have gone through, and enduring the things they have endured, should not be acting like teenagers anymore. Then they may be young, but they should not be acting as young as they sometimes are acting. And aside from perhaps just not signposting very well that you're making progress, sometimes you don't feel like you're making progress in the Wheel of Time. You feel like it's, you're watching the iceberg float by extremely slowly and waiting for it to hit something. But aside from those problems, it's a good series. Really solid series. I don't know that I said fantastic just now. I don't mean that. It's a good series. And it's important. It's an important landmark series for fantasy, more importantly. Um, I am interested to see where it's going, although I really don't feel urgency to continue. I'll probably read something else before I continue on my Wheel of Time journey. It's kind of lollygagging right now, and I'm not feeling like it's just you have to finish it. There's like a drive. I have to know. I have to finish it. Nah, Sanderson's better at that. I think that's what Sanderson took away from Wheel of Time is that even though he's the one that finished the series, I think that's something he took from this is that you need to show progress. I've watched several of his videos about writing, and it's something he's very passionate about is that in chapters in his books, you will know by the end of a chapter that progress has been made in that chapter toward the story. Like it's going somewhere. It's not random. It is going somewhere, and progress of some sort is being made, and there's a signpost to show you where you're at on the journey, right? So you don't feel like it's a waste of time at any point. At no point in Sanderson are you like, oh my God, who cares? Something is it's getting somewhere. Because Robert Jordan's just not like that. It might not go anywhere for a while, for a hot minute. And you might just be start circling going, what in the hell? What in the hell? It doesn't make it bad, but it's certainly different. It's a different reading experience. I don't feel this is definitely not one of those modern um tellings where you're like boom boom action 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 boom boom you're just driven through the story. This is not one of those. This is a meandering sometimes through a sprawling world. But yeah, that's all I got about Wheel of Time. I hope you eventually read it if you haven't read it. Um, and that if you have read it, you find what I'm saying totally entertaining because I'm sure I've said some things that will be reversed or changed in later books that I don't know about yet or made worse. Um, but that's all I got for today. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll try to come back and do another review when I get further into Wheel of Time. Thanks so much. Bye bye. Y'all have a good night.